Privet Katila Vandengrski desu, and this is the weekly Russo-Ukrainian War update for the week of October 2nd through October 8th, 2023. So today for this week, we actually have a lot of interesting updates, and so the first thing I would like to state is that what I've called the Zelensky Schlacht is basically over. The Ukrainian counteroffensive to take the land bridge to Crimea. This is pretty much over. The goal of reaching the strategic objective of reaching the Sea of Azov, or even just the operational objective of reaching Tokmak, is pretty much a pipe dream at this point. The rainy weather is upon us, and Ukraine, unless you'll have to wait probably at least till sometime in the winter if they want to keep fighting, or more likely they have to wait for another Western aid package to reconstitute their forces and do another attempt in next summer. The reason why I say this is over is because of that, of the weather and the losses that's been given. Now, that doesn't mean fighting has stopped. There is still some positional fighting around the Robotina axis, specifically around the Kopany front. And I've mentioned this in the last few videos that most likely, like even early, is that while they want to reach Tokmak, this is probably not going to happen. And so now that what they want to do is just secure their gains that they made here, because as I mentioned, the Russians still hold the flanks and basically turn this into a giant firing bag. So the Ukrainians have done small-scale assaults on Kopany. If they could take this relieves pressure on one of the biggest vulnerabilities on their flank here. However, they had not had much success in this area, at least any big note that would complicate the defenses here. However, the Russians have improved their tactical positions, not in any major way, but around Verva and Novopokrovka, the Russians managed to advance on a few of these tree lines. But the Ukrainians still have positions here. They still have the whole village of Robotina. But so the Russians are also trying to improve their tactical positions. Basically, they're just trying to make themselves get the best positions before the rainy season makes all offensive actions completely hard, almost impossible. But these small scale attacks are basically an admission that Ukraine isn't going to break through with these attacks. Like the attacks they go to Kopany are like maybe a tank or two, maybe three armored vehicles and maybe a dozen troops or something. That isn't going to break through to Tokmak. The purpose of those is try to occupy important areas for maybe a future push, or just improve the defensive posture. So basically, the offensive is over. They're still going to do positional battles in this area, probably for the rest of the time, to try to improve their positions here. But I think the main area of trying to actually make a breakthrough is over. And we're going to move to a new era in this war. So from the Zaporozhye front and the Kherson front, this front's been basically kind of unchanged a little bit. I want to talk quickly about the Kherson front now that we're talking about it. The Ukrainians are refitting the Marine troops they moved from the Velika Novosilka axis, and basically are refitting them with new troops. In the meantime, they've been increasing their positions on their little bridgeheads on the island positions on the islands, and also in their main positions of near Dacha, near the Antonovsky Bridge, and mostly in this area. And then they've also been there's been lots of staging grounds in this area. Now, as we know, the Russians have bombed this area intensely, and they still have bombed this still for this week as well. So, and the purpose of all this is because maybe the Ukrainians are actually fielding a force here, and they want to maybe seize this Novokhovka dam place and make this be like the new defense bell, have a bridgehead here. Again, I think I mentioned this in my other video. The purpose of the Kherson front is, I think there's two options. Either one, they're trying to make noise here so they could direct, Russians from Zaporozhye to Kherson to plug up any holes that the Ukrainians might get, and then thus it makes it easier for them to break through here. Or they might actually think like, hey, we're going to throw the die and maybe try to capture Kherson, make a giant breakthrough, and cut off the land bridge here, and then make the new front line maybe somewhere here. And then also they would be able to attack the Russians on two areas on the Zaporozhye direction to collapse this area as well. However, this is very unlikely to succeed because if Russian defenses don't just completely collapse in this area, they're going to face the same problem that the Russians did when they were on the other side of Kherson, where basically their supplies are in a bottleneck and it's going to be very hard to support it. They're able to support these small little bridgeheads because of they're right next to the front anyway, and they're mostly manned by special forces, DRG type people. And so they're easy just to hold there and just maintain a little bridgehead, but to create a big bridgehead and put thousands of troops there to hold it, and not only that, also expand from there is going to be very hard. So we don't know what exactly the Ukrainians plan on doing here, but they do plan on making some sort of mess here, or some sort of attacks here. The extent of their goals here is unknown, but we'll see. We'll follow the situation throughout the next few weeks and months to see what they do. Now, one of the biggest things of this week, besides kind of I think the end of the Zelensky Schlacht. A lot of people have actually been asking. Well, not actually, no one has asked, but I think I should explain myself. Why I call it the Zelensky Schlacht. So obviously, this means Zelensky's battle. Schlacht means battle in German. I've kind of copied from World War I the Kaiserschlacht, the Emperor's battle at the end of which was basically after the Germans won in the Eastern Front in World War I. They wanted to do a full-scale offensive to try to end the war on their terms before the Americans brought too many troops to France. And basically, they wanted just to defeat France right there and there before America was going to make it impossible. And so, there was, they basically did that attack to try to, make the war end on their terms before the other side got too strong. So that's what the Ukrainians wanted, to take the land bridge, basically bomb the Crimean bridge, and try to basically starve Crimea to surrender. And basically from that point, they were going to do some negotiation where Russia gives up the entire Donbass and everything they gained, and in exchange, either they give Crimea to Russia in the best case scenario for Russia, or in Ukraine's point of view, or they do some sort of sharing agreement of Crimea. Yeah, I'm drinking some right now. So they were trying to basically, do a quick offensive, but again, all this planning was based on wrong lessons learned from the Kharkov and Kherson attacks, offensives. So, yeah, that's basically why I've called it the Zelensky Schlacht. It was a final play, get a bunch of Western equipment, the biggest donations ever, and try to make a major breakthrough that would be a strategic loss for Russia. But it has failed. Now, again, to the next biggest thing of this war over this week so far is actually a new Russian push from the Oskol front, as I call it, to the Donetsk front. And I call this the massage offensive. Now, the reason why I call this the massage offensive is because, as far as we know, this is not the start of a real Russian offensive. Just as, for example, if you remember, maybe a month ago, Russia improved its positions mostly in this area around Sinkovka a little bit. They captured very strong points here, here a little bit. But again, this wasn't but then they stopped. Now, the same thing, we don't know if this is what's happening here, or is this actually the start of a Russian push? We don't know. We'll have to see in the next few weeks. But for now, I basically call this the massage offensive because the point is that you attack in various points along the front for a payoff in the future. And I think that's what's happening. Obviously, as I mentioned, the weather is going to turn very rainy and very shitty for any offensive ops. So Russia starting a major push now would be kind of stupid. But I think what they're doing is doing small-scale attacks where they could improve their tactical positions so that they could, when they do a main offensive push, which I think might come in winter, they'll be in a better position to do so. Because the hardest part is making a breakthrough. If they could like maybe grind out better positions to attack from, they can make a breakthrough happen more quicker in their main offensive, and that they could maybe collapse the front a bit faster. Now the pressure points have been in a bunch of areas. The first is here on Sinkovka. They've been some rumors that they've like kind of attacked here, maybe advanced a couple hundred meters. But the thing about all these things is that it's very hard to geolocate them because there has been no geolocations. But we've basically only are basing this off like what people on the ground say, and so we don't know the exact details, just like kind of some hearsay about that. But I think almost everyone agrees that there's been some pushes here, and there's been some reported advances. But again, the fog of war makes the extent of these advances kind of hard to pinpoint. So I can't say like how significant these pressure point massages are, but you can just tell you on the general what they're trying to do. I think in these they're going to try to secure Sinkovka, and basically then because once they take Sinkovka, they'll basically be able to start attacking Kupinsk itself, which is split in the Oskol in half. This is Kupinsk, and then these are like the suburbs of Kupinsk, which are going to need to be broken through. But once they take these villages and these strong points on the outer edges here, they could actually start attacking the city directly instead of having to worry about these outwards positions. And then another area they've been advancing in is in this area, the Kislivka front. This is the next Ukrainian defense belt. Because if this collapses, basically the Russians will reach the southern portion of the suburbs here. The point, they might be actually trying to take this whole place in this offensive, because that's basically the best thing they could do. Now there's been some rumors saying they've advanced into this village here, but there's been no confirmation of that just yet. There's also been that they've actually advanced in a big way in the southern area from here to around here, and they're basically putting pressure on this little village here, and the Ukrainians have fallen back here in Tablivka. Obviously, the purpose of this is that the main Ukrainian defenses is in the major village of this area, Klishivka, around the railroad tracks, and the purpose is basically to surround it, put pressure, and basically take this entire defense node here, collapse it, and the Ukrainians will have to fall back basically to this area, on the to defend the southern suburbs of Kupinsk. So basically, the purpose of this on the northern Oskol offensive is basically to try to reach the suburbs of Kupinsk. But again, we don't know the extent of the details yet. There's also been a slight Russian attack in Mavkivka here. Again, this is pressure points along the entire front. As we know, they've attacked here near the I call it the Novigorivka front. This is like the main axis of where the Russians broke through and put pressure here. They're now putting pressure in Makivka. They advanced and got kind of very close to the settlement. They haven't taken it yet. They haven't entered it yet. But there's been a Russian advance here that took accordingly some tree lines, some checkpoints. Again, if they take this, then they could basically try to develop their offensive, try to find like the weakest points here to basically reach the Oskol River. Again, that's the main purpose of this offensive, is to reach the Oskol River. Now, another area. Now they haven't. Now, while the Oskol front might be the main area where Russia attacks for their offensive in the winter, they've also probably are going to do a bunch of other advances, just as how the Ukrainians advanced in Bakhmut while the main offensive was happening in Zaporozhye. This time, instead of in southern Bakhmut, we're going to see an advance in Seversk front. Now, I've always said that, maybe this is just me projecting on what I would do, but, I think, the advances in Kupin, in the Oskol front will coincide with an advance in Seversk. And I was thinking they were going to go, kind of northwest and try to, kind of hook up with the troops that end up taking Liman and just liquidate this pocket. They don't have to attack here. Basically, they force the Ukrainians to push, fall back, or else they get surrounded and have to give up. But it looks like they're also advancing here anyway, because most of the advance of this front on this front have been near Visolia. They've actually been advancing up this railroad, and basically trying to. They took a few checkpoints here. Again, it's hard to say exactly where, but there's been some advances here. They've also been bombing Spornia a little bit, and probably the purpose of this is that they could try to force the Ukrainians back to Ivano-Darivka and Vimvka, get closer to Seversk, and maybe put more pressure, or at least put Ukrainians out of reach of this main highway, at the very least. But again, this is a very fortified line, and it's going to take it's going to take a lot of grind, and basically the Ukrainians will just keep pushing unlimited men here until the Russians eventually make the situation compromised, and the Ukrainians will fall back maybe to here or something. But again, kind of the same thing in Bakhmut, where basically they held, they made this a meat grinder until they couldn't hold it anymore, and they just fell back to a few hundred, just a little bit back to Chasiv Yar. There wasn't it wasn't like once they took Bakhmut they fell back fully. It was just pushing them out from a major sector. Same thing will happen in Seversk if they just advance directly on it. That's just why I've always advanced. Again, if you advance here though, it's harder for the Ukrainians to take it back. While as if you advance here, I do admit it makes it looks like an excursion, like a extension here, like a salient, and basically your flanks are vulnerable. So maybe they think that it's gonna be a slow grind and it's gonna be very risky to advance up here. Maybe they do both at the same time. Maybe they attack here and attack northwest here to try to keep the troops here and not have them all be focusing here. Who knows? Maybe put pressure on here to force them out as they push up here. That way, maybe if they advance on this area, it's going to be easier because the Ukrainians know that as they attack here, the Russians are getting closer up here. Maybe that's what they're hoping, but who knows? There's also been in the Donetsk direction, there's been some rumors that Wagner have deployed to Avdiivka. There's been bombings here. There's been an uptick in escalations here, but so far there has not been any changes on the ground. The Russians have their positions around Krasnogorivka, and trying to defend here. They've also still hold the Opno-Vodanya line. Basically, the Ukrainians need to hold Tonivka and Sinivka here. They don't want the Russians to expand their bridgehead here and advance in these things on these two villages here, because they don't want Avdiivka surrounded. Now, Avdiivka, they might basically. This might be the secondary axis of Ukrainian advance. The Seversk front might be to try to link up with the offensive in Kupinsk in the Olsko front, which might be the main axis. So this might be a secondary plate. So the Seversk front serves kind of in the same junction, as that offensive, but this doesn't. If there's going to be offensive in the Donetsk front, which there might be, this might just be to put a big push here to try to draw Ukrainian reserves here as well. And the purpose is basically push the Ukrainians out of artillery range of Donetsk. That's the main point. Take Avdiivka, take basically all the main defense belt here, and force the Ukrainians probably back to Kurakova, somewhere on this area or something. Now, there's also been advances here. The Russians have taken some strongholds around Novomikhailivka, as I mentioned. They've been bombing this area daily, every day, for the last few weeks. So I believe that, and there's been actually an advance here. They took some checkpoints, apparently, according to Rybar. So they've been slowly advancing. They're trying to advance into this stronghold here. They've been advancing, trying to take the hills here. But once they do, if they do able to take that, they'll be able to take this village and try to advance, with the ultimate goal of taking Konstantinovka. That's the main goal, because then they threaten the Ugledar front. That'd be a secondary point of attacking here. So again, there's been a lot of interesting details. Not any big changes on the map. There's been a restart of Russian massaging here. but we don't know the extent of it just yet. The Ukrainian offensive for the Zelensky Schlacht, as I call it, is basically over, but the Ukrainians are still going to try to positionally attack to improve their their salient, and probably try to stir up trouble in Kherson. So that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you liked this video. If you liked my commentary for this week's events in Ukraine. I know there's been other big events around the world, but I've been autistically following this conflict, and I kind of have I'm kind of interested in how it plays out. While things like in Armenia, right, or in Israel, I don't really care. I don't really care about those things. Um, at least not as much as I care about Ukraine. Um, so yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope you liked it. As I mentioned, like this video, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. So aim high, wander on, from America with Russian love.